A little podcast here with Tribe Social. I've got my friend Andrew Birchfield here who's joining us. Today, we're just going to be diving into how different churches and faith based organizations can leverage some of the tools that are out today, including we're going to hit on kind of decentralized tech, Web3, some of the low code tools that are out there. I originally met Andrew a couple years back. They were one of our first Tribe Social customers that jumped on in the early days. And so they believed in us, saw the vision, and I can tell you it did maybe 10% of what does today. Like when you guys first saw it, it was very, very basic. And so we've just been, building together. And Andrew has done a ton with their team and sort of taking it to another level, leveraging tools like FlutterFlow and other tools to essentially expand the reach of what their ministry is doing. And so I just we were going to have a conversation anyway and kind of sync up and see, what he's working on. We can talk through, kind of geek out about this stuff. So we thought this may help other churches, any other faith-based communities that are out there. So Andrew is also he's the executive producer at Birchfield Ministries International. And I believe you're also a fellow PK.
I am.
So we have that in common.
Yeah,
So he's been around for a bit in this world. So
definitely. Yeah, I'm one of the PKs who didn't go off the rails, and I'm
you're still here and you're working for the church.
I still love Jesus, love my wife, love my family, and excited about tech. So
that's awesome. So maybe just maybe jump into like some overview, like what your role is and kind of how you guys have used how we got into this space of leveraging some of this tech for
sure. For sure. Well, first off, just thanks for even having the conversation. I love I love you guys, and I love Tribe Social and what you guys have provided for a ministry like us with our various outreaches has just been, words can't even really compare, like how monumental they have been. They came at the right time in the right way, and it's just been fun to kind of see you grow and really to grow with you. You guys have always been just massive on the support side, and we're incredibly grateful for that. But basically, a little bit about me. Me and my beautiful wife Amanda, we live here in Texas. We got 3 kiddos and are serving a ministry and organization that my parents founded about 35 years ago. Our heart is really just to help churches. Really, we kind of focus on the non-denominational, charismatic side of churches, but anybody who's pointing people to Jesus, we get excited about it and ready to help them. So we're one ministry with multiple outreaches, and kind of pre-COVID, our different outlets kind of involved where we had a summer camp program, we had a retreat center, we had a Bible school where we would gather like young adults and college kids, a television show that we were doing. It was kind of just all these little pockets of things that would really support and help the local church. So, people would bring kids to our summer camp program. We would have resources in the Bible school, and just anything that really could really help build and bless his church was kind of our thing, just helping people with tools and resources and all the above. So on the tech side of that, I guess probably rewind back to I don't know, 2007, 8, 9, 10, somewhere long ago. As a PK, you don't volunteer, you're voluntold, right? It's like, this is what you're going to do. And so the guy that was kind of doing our IT at the time, left, he had resigned, and it was kind of like, Andrew, you're taking over the website. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Now my background was broadcast media. So I was real big in television and loved the creative, loved the arts, musician, just all that stuff. But I had never done any of the IT stuff at all whatsoever. So I was like, well, how hard can a website be? He's like, there's this one guy, he kind of did whatever we did or we're doing right now. It's this thing called WordPress and whatever. So fast forward, we end up hiring this guy full time. He was actually an alumni of our Bible school, and hired him full time. We're like, hey, can you just come manage websites for us? Because each outreach had a website, and there was just a lot of stuff going on. So he comes to me one day and he says, hey, I see this problem in the ministry, and I think I could fix it if you would let me make a custom plugin. I was like, what the heck's a custom plugin? I'm just clueless of anything WordPress. So he's like, well, basically we're going to leverage this plugin to kind of take data that we already have in our website and make it do what we want it to do. And I was like, sounds good. If it answers the problem, I'm all for it. Keep it simple. Let's rock and roll. So he makes this plugin, and lo and behold, it was like, hey, this is kind of cool. Like this worked. Like our internal team was excited. They were be able to like see stuff. Remember, this is 2010. Like, I mean, Steve Jobs is just putting out iPhones and iPads, and like the world is completely revolutionizing right before our very eyes. And so, me as a visionary guy, I'm like, I see a tool I can use, which is one reason I love Tribe so much. And I'm like, holy cow, I can do so much with this one thing. And that's kind of where I fell into the whole custom plugin thing. Was I was like, plugins for days. You get a plugin. You get a plugin. We were just going around the office, like giving everybody, creating little WordPress sites. So, but then, fast forward now, 2021, 22, 23, and like all of these systems were so bloated. I mean, in our summer camp, in over 35 years, I mean, we saw like 500,000 campers from like 2,000 different churches. So we have a ton of records, ton of stuff, and WordPress is just like dying on the inside because it's not built for, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I started just kind of searching around and really looking for stuff. Cue the pandemic, everything changes. We've got to pivot. We've got to pivot hard. We've got to pivot fast. And I just kind of saw it where some people saw it as a problem. I saw it as an opportunity from a tech side. And I was like, this is a great time to get rid of all technical debt that we have built up over the past 15 years. And so started really looking for products and resources to leverage. And through another awesome company, I was looking around. I was like, hey, you know anybody that we're trying to find something for some event live stream stuff? And he was like, hey, this new guy called Tribe Social. You should check him out. And as a faith guy and a believer in divine connections, that's really kind of what this landed at. And been rocking with Bruce for about 3-4 years now and loving every second of it. And so he brought Tribe. Really, like any great app that's on my phone or iPad or in my world, Bruce has pretty much introduced me to. So I need to send you like a commission finder's fee or something.
Yeah, all my referral links are
You
doing
need to, man. Yeah, you could be banking right now, buddy. But I've just been really so impressed with Tribe, and because of the multiple outreaches that we have, it was really cool to just say, here's a tool. It will work for whatever case study you're using, whatever you need it for. And that's really my job, which is kind of the full circle to your question of the executive producer role. Is my job is to take this team, take all of these very different outreaches and kind of mesh them together, but keeping the structures and infrastructure central enough that we as a core team can really support everything around us and kind of go. And so with Tribe and then FlutterFlow, and it was just like off to the races, man. And it has been a wild, really kind of 2 years in just development world and deleting stuff and turning off servers and spinning up this and domains that and all the geeky stuff that I'm sure we're going to get into. So
Yeah,
that's how we got here.
This is great. So, and jumping into like, so there's kind of like these phases. You guys were doing a ton of in-person stuff. Pandemic hit. You guys canceled a ton of, like, I think when we first met, you had just canceled summer camps, which you guys were known for, like, these big events that were kind of big anchors. So initially, I think it kind of just maybe talk through. Initially, you guys were just doing some live streaming of the Sunday services.
Yep.
But then it's kind of grown from that.
Oh, drastically. So the nice thing about our world is we can kind of beta test in smaller areas before we roll out to larger audiences. So, like our local church, I mean, everybody was looking for a live stream Sunday morning local church experience. And so that's what we started with. We were just like, hey, if this works for our online congregational needs and in our church, then we could roll it out to our camp audience and then our Bible school audience and just kind of see it progress, because we knew every audience we were going to go to was going to be more scale and more demand. And we wanted to kick the tires on this thing a couple of times before we actually really saw it. And this was all really kind of before, this was like just Tribe Social by itself. Like, we were just kind of really trying to see, we weren't doing all the fancy stuff. We were just like, can we stream? Can we get a chat? Can it look good? Can it work? And can it not break the bank? Obviously as a nonprofit, you're constantly looking for ways to be resourceful with the resources you've got. So we started with just streaming. And then we were like, okay, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's do a live event, like an actual virtual event, And typically with our conference center, what we would do is we would host, weekend retreats, and say 30 or 40 different church groups would bring anywhere from 25 to 50 people from that group type into our campus, and we would host them and feed them and lodge them and do all of that stuff. And so like the virtual thing was like, hey, we can still gather people, because in our heart, that's what we want to do. We want to bring the church together, right? So if we could bring all these different churches together, and we can't do it physically right now because of COVID restrictions, how could we do that virtually? And do it well, like do it with excellence, and not just do like, hey, we're jumping in a Facebook group. Like, like that's cool. Like, it's not a bad thing. Like some people, I get that's the only option, but I was really looking for something that could really support our needs and then support our future growth ideas too. So yeah, so since then we have rolled Tribe out to every single outreach we have in different facets. Some people are using groups, some people aren't. It just kind of depends on the case study. But yeah, it has been rock solid. And I think what's kind of been interesting, and I would actually love to hear your thoughts on this, was like, sometimes with vision, because like you're a visionary too, sometimes with vision, it's just foggy, but you're like, I know this is the right road. Like I'm just gonna keep walking and it's gonna get clear as it comes to me, right? And I feel like in that first 2 years, like you're walking down this path called Tribe Social and you're trying to figure it out. And I mean, y'all made some pivots too. Like technically you made some pivots, direction, product map, roadmap directions. Like what was that like? Because I feel like you were able to do that very successfully without losing the core of what Tribe was originally like
Hmm.
designed for. Because I
Yeah,
was always nervous, like, okay, here comes an update. He's fixing to pull the carpet from under my feet, and all my stuff goes away.
yeah. Everything you knew is now changed.
You're right. Like I have to go find something new, but that hasn't been the case, which I'm very grateful for. But what
Yeah,
was that like for you, like just as a founder, like figuring that out?
for sure. So I think, anytime you're building a tool, whether it's for ministry or for any application, like you got to look back and see like what's the pain point that we're actually solving for, what's the problem we're solving for, and then also like we try to exhaust like every other potential tool. So like I
Yeah.
love the idea of leveraging Notion and these low code tools and kind of pulling things together with Zapier and trying to rig something together initially because if you can solve the problem kind of ugly, right?
Sure.
Then it kind of leads person like, hey, I think that if we made a tool that does this and really simplifies all that, it's going to help some people out. So previously, we had seen tremendous life change and community happening virtually from like 2019 going into 2020 through people running challenges, jumping on Zoom calls, and then being part of a Facebook community.
Right.
And as a software company, we saw that trajectory and we just thought like, wow, like that's actually happening. It's being kind of rigged
Yeah.
together. It's being done in an ugly way. I know we can solve this problem. That's kind of our North Star was like, we need to have community, a way to have, connection, community, and have that all on a platform where it's done in a safe place that maintains the ownership. So the important thing is you guys are on Tribe, but you're really on like a Birchfield Ministries, server and
Yeah.
node and everything. It's totally decentralized to us. So we're pushing updates and you guys get the benefit of that. But it's you guys kind of own that tech stack. You own the database. You own like where the videos are being stored.
Right.
All those little components. So that way, if we go away, it's not dependent on Bruce or
Right.
our company to be around. We're planning to be around. This is something we're
Oh,
going to
you're
spend
gonna
the
be
next
around, buddy.
decade.
We're not gonna let you go anywhere.
Yeah, we're going to be on this for the next decade. My wife
Yeah.
and I are very passionate about, especially serving churches and faith based and using these tools to
Totally.
help improve people's lives. And because we've been again benefactors of massive life change and discipleship happening in this type of environment. And so I just want it to be done where you're not being held hostage, by
Right.
the Facebooks and the YouTube and these other platforms where you have a little bit of control and security, and of course ownership. So yeah, that's kind of how it's changed a lot as far as like that's why we're doing it, and like how
Yeah.
we're doing it has evolved for sure. What the tool looks like, what the tech looks like, the tech stack has evolved definitely over the last few years for sure. And you've kind of seen it in all of its phases
Yeah.
with us.
Well, I remember like, I mean, even when you started bringing up conversations and just like offline or in our texts or whatever, and like you were getting ahead of problems that some of the tech space isn't really facing yet. Like when you decided to go like decentralized, like that was a massive conversation, and I know like on the background, you and your team, y'all were having stuff. And I remember thinking at first, like, that just feels like a really heavy lift right now. But as a guy who appreciates laying foundation for future growth, I was like, I get it. And I'm all in for it. And I don't think like, not to get like too crazy out there or whatever, but like, yeah, what happens when there's so much censorship, right? That we're
Mhm.
not able to produce the content and have the chats in community and around each other that we desire to, and that our faith requires of us to have what we see in scripture. Like, what happens when you can't do that because somebody else says no, you can't do that or can't do this? And so, like, I
Yeah.
applaud you for even like throwing the prophetic football like out there like really far, man, and like saying like we're gonna go run and
Yeah.
catch this thing, because it made such a massive difference for me as a decision maker, thinking like, okay, like the decisions I'm making are going to affect a lot of teams and a lot of people underneath me, and I want to make sure that I'm giving them the tools they need that's going to really support them, and that we're not just like going. And I think too, like, not to get preachy, but I'm a PK, right? So it has to happen like just very, very briefly. But like the definition of church is changing in today's age, right? And if you go down and you actually search through scripture, like you'll see that the church, as we know, it's not a building, it's literally just groups of people, like groups of believers coming together. And that does not have to happen in four walls. Like it can happen absolutely anywhere. And I love to hear what you're talking about, like the life change and the transformation. And it's crazy to think that some of my closest friends do not live in my city, right?
Yeah.
We talk on Zoom, we talk on FaceTime, we're texting, and
I mean,
they're
we've never met in
we've
person.
never
Yeah.
physically met face to face, right? Like, but like we're constantly like, hey, check this out or this or whatever. So I just think the timing of all of this conversation
Yeah.
is great, and to leverage the to leverage the technology to where we're not just holding stuff together with glue and popsicle sticks anymore, but like, no, this is legit code. Like, no code is a real thing, low code's a real thing, like AI is a real thing, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, let's leverage it. Let's make it work for what our missions are, and move it forward.
Yeah. We've been really, for I would say over a decade specifically, my wife Lindsay and I have been very passionate about leveraging the digital landscape to help with what you're talking about, with discipling nations, with building community, building places where you can kind of host these events to happen, where it's not me. Like I guess the previous model was like we do a virtual conference, right? And we like stream to all these people, and they watch the content and they chat. Like
Right.
that's good. I mean, it's better than not streaming it, right? Because
Sure.
we're confined by how many seats are in the room.
Right.
Now there's essentially an infinite amount of people that could be consuming that. But we've all been to conferences, right? Where you go to the conference and it's amazing and it's life changing. And you're like, I'll never be the same until a
Right.
week later when you're like,
Right.
what was that conference about? Like, I can't even remember what, they talked about. And that happens in, business, in entrepreneurship, in church. It happens in so many different spheres. And so I think that's where we saw this model where there are people who are doing life with each other. So there's initially that's where you saw like Tribe was kind of like we call it like the Netflix clone, where you could go and you could search for a video, you could find a topic, you can drill into it and watch a piece of content, and there was some there's some comments or
Right.
chat happening. So that's very basic. It's Netflix. You can kind of get to videos fast, and it's one way to distribute content. But now, like, it's definitely morphed, which was our original intent, to be more of like a private Facebook group clone, where there is, people being able to post, ask questions, commenting. People are going live from their phone, broadcasting, a question they have, a comment, a testimonial that they're sharing. And so it's evolved more into that. And I think it's going to be kind of this, course part where we're going through some structured content, but then there's just tons of, posts and people kind of chatting between, weekly meetings or monthly meetings. And so I think, this is a great way instead of just having, especially for churches where we're
Totally.
typically like so focused on Sunday, especially for like when you're a smaller church, the Sunday is the big event.
That's it.
And then you try to kind of bring people into other, small groups and other things. But that we kind of were part of this online, it was a kingdom entrepreneurship group, and it just sort of took over our lives in a good way,
Yeah.
where we were making friends like this, and we have friends all over the world through this. That some of them we've never met in person, and they're you can actually connect, not because before it was like you were geographically, I had to be in Andrews City,
Right.
and now, to actually even have that connection now, like we can connect on topics, we can connect on different interests, we can connect on so many different levels, and we can find like mind, like hearts, across the world. So that's super
Yeah.
exciting.
No, I love it. And I think like more than ever, it's kind of like what you've done with Tribe is pretty remarkable in the sense that it's kind of like whatever feature you would kind of want from like all the social platforms, you've kind of like bundled them all together. It's like the Avengers of social media platforms, like all together. Like you can go live, you can consume content, you can post community, like you can do all these things. And from an admin perspective, you can like decide which groups get what and like what you need and how you need it and like all this stuff. So I think you've done a really good job where some even like from a UI standpoint, like you've done a really great job of saying like, okay, is this feature really needed? And if it is, where are we going to put it and how are we going to make it look good so it doesn't just get like completely trashed by the end of version 45, and it's just like completely jumbled everywhere. So like I agree with you. I think that more than ever, like community and accountability and specific topics and like desires and like people gather around things. And obviously we, from a Christian perspective, we obviously gather around our faith, but even then, like to be able to gather around grief or someone who's gone through a loss and there's other people there who can process that, or like, hey, I've been here, I've done this, versus someone who's like super excited and just like, hey, like this is what's life's like now and we just got married or we're having kids or newborn season or whatever it might be. Like that's what the church is for. And sometimes you can't just sit down and give everybody your life story and or the tips that they're looking for within a 90-minute service context. They need more. And that's really what Tribe was for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we started it there and then we kind of built it out into our app, and it's the engine that's running pretty much all of what we do from a community standpoint.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, I'd love to like dive into just kind of how you guys are using it today. I know you guys have like your own kind of BMI node, which you've got multiple platforms. Those platforms could have multiple groups. So you're kind of using the full suite.
Sure.
I would say I would go as far as say I think you guys are using it the most, using all the pieces. Maybe only second to us who are
Wow.
leaving it. But as far as all of our clients, like a lot of times people are kind of using one platform on one node with one group, or
Yep.
something very similar like that. So I'd love to, because you guys have used all the features, and it's kind of dovetail nicely with how your communities are structured, your ministry structured. Um, so yeah, I'd love to just hear a couple of those applications.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we'll start with the church because I mean that makes the most sense, I guess. So when we started with Tribe, we were only, like I said, we were only streaming, and we had online chat, and we had like the ability to like add the ads at the bottom, which we just basically used as like links to the giving page or links to a schedule or whatever. And then my brother and I, who he's our leadership development coach for the ministry, we were talking one day and we were like, there really is like two completely separate like website needs for a church community. You need like your brochure site, like this is who we are, this is what we believe. And then we need like the kitchen, like this, like the living room. This is where like life is happening. And so we dove all into Tribe kind of being that community spot. And we put that URL on everything. I mean, every handout card, it's on the screens. It's like bwc.online. That's where you're going. And then out of that, we were able to kind of really get it going. So we had enough going on. Like one of the big things that we do in our church is we have like a daily Bible reading that we do all together as a church. So we created a group in Tribe, and we're able to go through and say, okay, hey, this is the reading for the week. Here's Monday, here's Tuesday, we'd have the schedule there. And then we were able to set up like the notifications kind of later to go in to where now every morning at 8 a.m. I get a notification from my church that says, this is the reading of the day, like read and enjoy. We go into like our journey groups things. We were able to make like smaller journey groups and even just to give the admin control to people who might not be as technical. Like you're not going in like trying to get database stuff to work and all that. Like, no, just Tribe just does it. You just go in the background and do it. So we kind of wanted to take the step farther. And we had an old church app. I feel like everyone always has like the old church app that like never did anything, right? And so like we had
Yeah, we tried apps once.
yeah, like it was just like, yeah, no, sorry, we're not doing that. And there was just no involvement. The app never got updated in like 7 years. It was horrific. And I remember saying like, I would love to have a way to do this. And it was kind of like at the same point, you were like, well, actually, there's this thing called FlutterFlow, and you kind of introduced me to that world. And so we were able to leverage FlutterFlow connected to Tribe and create our own app. So our mobile app now really is exactly what we always kind of dreamed it could be and would be, in that it's constantly updated with new content because the community is just in a spot where things are happening. And two, we can leverage it and scale it to a way that we want to because the engine of Tribe is so strong. So, I mean, we can double click on any one of those topics that you want,
Yeah,
but
that's good.
it's been great.
There, yeah, for sure. And so I think I just also to mention, like, if you're not familiar with churches, I think from a tech standpoint,
Yep.
churches are insanely complicated. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you have kind of schools, you've got children, ministries, you've got so many different communities happening with small groups and other topic. You've got Sunday streaming, of course. Sometimes you have multiple campuses. You're doing conferences, so you're doing event hosting. It's just a very wide range of tools. And I know there
Yep.
are tools out there where they try to be the all-in-one tool for churches. And I think if you're getting started, those can be fantastic.
Sure.
When you reach a certain point, you start to hit the the boundaries of those tools. And
Right.
what's been cool is I think you guys have built really your own app, which you own. It's in FlutterFlow. Like,
Yep.
if we go away, you guys can keep editing it. And you've been able to integrate with other tools as well for giving and other
Right.
applications. And if 6 months from now or a year from now, whatever, you guys want to change that tool, you're in full control of it. Like, we don't even have to be a part of that conversation, which is
Sure.
powerful.
Well, I think what the launch pad was, and I mean, speak to this however much you want to or not want to, but like when when Tribe was able to produce or like pull the veil back and say, here's our API,
Yeah.
it was like sky's the limit, right? Because up to that point, we were kind of limited, and that was like the conversation with the team all the time. Like, we could just replace this old thing and just use Tribe. Oh, but it doesn't do that one thing we need, right? And like that one thing that team leader is like die hard about. It's their non-negotiable, like they gotta have it, whatever. So now, like by having the API, we've been able to go, okay, cool. Well, let's just build it out in FlutterFlow however we want, like dream it up to your own custom specs. And I mean, over 15 years or so, like we've gained a lot of technical expertise now, and they're like, that's really not a good way to build that. Let's do this instead. So to be able to take it, like that's kind of what we're doing now with some of our Bible school stuff, is we're leveraging Tribe where it makes sense, and then it's kind of like a hybrid approach to areas that might not fully make sense just yet, we integrate that with other services that does support, and then we are able to kind of like pull together this scenario. And in a low code thing, FlutterFlow makes it so amazingly simple that as long as I have kind of a playbook and an idea of how this thing should be structured, I can use that. And now you got stuff like build ship and everything. It's like, dude,
Mhm.
like, what am I even doing on the planet anymore? Like, we're done. This is it. You know, like this is great.
For sure, yeah. And I think, while there's the API to handle a lot of the video streaming and all that in itself is its own solves a bunch of problems. We're looking more and more, evolving Tribe into more leveraging more Flutterflow, more Firebase, more of that component because you can build things a lot tighter. So it's new territory for sure. We're definitely
For
pioneering
sure.
something new, and I think every app development company like this where you're trying to give, you can either go two routes. You either get like, here's the template and everybody uses this template and we can turn a few things on and off. Or we go the total custom route. And then every time we make a change, it's like on a custom. So we're kind of trying to figure out this middle ground where we can have leverage components and pieces of code with each other across projects. So if I build, a cool little direct messaging widget,
Right.
how does Andrew like pull that into his app very easily without
Right.
having to reinvent the wheel, or
Right.
vice versa? If you guys build something, we can share it.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's kind of a question that like every so often the industry changes, right? I remember, when I was first getting into like broadcast television, that was right at like the turning point where all the SD stuff was becoming HD, right? And so like everything changes. Like the video players are changing, the codecs are changing, like it's all changing. And I think in software, where I haven't been in it obviously as long as you have, but I've definitely seen it from the sidelines, and we're at that same critical turning point right now. All the guys who have developed stuff for 30 plus years by hand just are completely annoyed that a 14-year-old can come in and in 3 clicks do the same thing, right? And as a church guy who's constantly looking for talent, who wants to give people opportunities and volunteer status and stuff, it's like, man, this is really cool. And it's crazy because, man, I used to have like in all of our church leadership workshops and stuff, I would always tell church pastors, like, go find a 14-year-old and he can run your media department. Like just give him an iPad and YouTube and he'll figure it out. And it's
That's how I
crazy.
got started.
Yeah, I
Someone,
mean,
I was the
literally,
14-year-old that they're like, hey, you want to run sound?
exactly, right? And I mean, isn't it crazy to think though, Bruce, that that same conversation we can just copy and paste into the
Right.
development world of software now? We can literally give that same 14-year-old an iPad and say, go look up FlutterFlow and figure it all out. Like it's doable. And I just want to encourage, like, if you're a church leader out there, or even like an entrepreneur, you've got a dream that you feel like, like God has given you, and you want to like build it out in a way, like there's areas now and tools now that make it way easier and way more cost effective than what it would have been even 5 years ago. Like it's just,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
for sure. Very cool. Um, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know where we want to go from here. I'd love to. I mean, so you guys have done, you've done some of this through Tribe. Some of it you guys have gone on to FlutterFlow and built something. Maybe I know you guys built out this Bible Institute.
Yep.
If you want to jump into some of that.
For sure. Yeah. So for 33 years, traditionally, our Bible school was, you would come to our 1,088-acre campus in Columbus, Texas, and you would live on campus for 4 months at a time, right? It was kind of really geared for ages like 17 to 25. And we would teach the Bible. We would teach foundational stuff. It wasn't necessarily like seminary or something. That it was just people who were able to say like, my faith is important to me, I want to know it, I want it to be the foundation of my life before I go off into college or trade school or start my career or the military or whatever you wanted to do. And we did that for a long time, and was able to see some pretty remarkable things. Over 5,000 alumni and 42 nations and 39 states. I mean, it was really cool to see how the reach went. But when we started, seeing all the stuff, and we started saying like, man, we could really give the Bible school to churches and really allow them to leverage the content, but also the community aspects of it. Like how could we do that, and what would that look like? So we double clicked on FlutterFlow. By now, we had already done the church app, so I kind of knew enough about FlutterFlow to feel comfortable with it. I didn't go the Firebase route. I went the Supabase route. We could duke that out if you want to. But it was really cool to kind of see we were able to create an app that was generating custom codes for students, regardless of where they were in the world, provide all of the PDFs, all of the videos, and it was kind of, we would also ship them a box with all of the workbooks and all the textbooks in hand. So really, you get your box, you open it up, you start going through the school, and the FlutterFlow app is kind of the guide that kind of is walking you through it. You take some quizzes, and then at the completion of the quizzes, you get your diploma in Christian life studies. And so we were able to build 100% of that in FlutterFlow. And the way to do it in like such an easy aspect has just been really, really pretty remarkable. Now the fun part, which is where Tribe will kind of come back into place, is as people become alumni of the school, we will then dump them into the World Alumni Association community aspect from in Tribe, and then allow that to continue to grow, to foster relationships of it's just something like, like when like you've been through something, and it's like when like a Marine sees another Marine, it's just like there's a bond there that's just like amazing, right? So same thing from a believing standpoint, is we want to make that a real thing. So I think the real question for me now, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, is that like everyone always wants their app to be like serious, like taken seriously. Like, yeah, this is a real app. This is a real piece of technology. Like, this is really doable. And I feel like the low code, no code space is still trying to prove itself, and in a way, like what you said earlier, like, yeah, you could use Zapier for that. But then there's like some parts of me are like, yeah, but I don't want to use Zapier. Like I want it to be a real app. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel like the low code, no code space is at a place in the industry that is like, yeah, you can take this serious. Like, this is coming from your background and all the apps you've done over the years and like everything, like, is it legit?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, and we've gone, when we started in 2010, our company, we were doing custom dev. So that was, we were hiring developers, paying, $50 to $100 an hour, costs, trying to mark that up and do, all these massive projects. So when someone say, hey, we want to build an app, my mind, that's 50 to 125K to like get it started. Right. So, and that's kind of how we would go about building these projects. And then we'd take 6 months to a year to go build out all these modules. And, it was a long, process. So and that's even, we've copied that same, there's efficiencies and ways it's gotten cheaper and easier. And there's frameworks and stuff that we've leveraged. So when we built Tribe, we started with code, we wrote all the, custom code, we connected to our own databases and made it totally standalone. Then when we went to go do mobile's quite a challenging thing to just kind of break into. And there are sort of like there's like websites that you can kind of use inside of an app, and that never really gives a great experience. So you need to leverage some of those native tools and processes that are in the app to make it feel kind of fast and functional. And so, I think Bubble was one of the first, in this space, and I could never figure out Bubble. Like, it just never made sense to me.
Never touched it.
Always looked very ugly, no matter what. And then I stumbled into FlutterFlow somewhere and just started, hacking around with some stuff. I figured out enough of it to figure out, I think we actually decided to go and we investigated. I spent a few months, like we set up everything in Bubble. We set up everything in, and I can't remember, there's 2 or 3 other, competitors before we tried, FlutterFlow. And ownership has been a huge deal. So as soon as you could own the source code, it didn't feel like you were tied to this tool. I can take all my code and go get a Flutter developer, and he can, they can keep building for us. That was super powerful. And I think with the type of apps that we're dealing with, it's social. It's people don't realize how complex a platform like Twitter or X or Facebook or Instagram actually is. It seems on the surface, it feels easy and it feels
Yep,
okay. There's just a feed. I can see pictures and videos. I can follow people. So it's kind of a simple. I mean, you could really build it even with code,
for
in
sure.
a weekend if you wanted to. People don't realize is that the user experience gets exponentially more complicated to keep it snappy and fast and right at your fingertips. So we felt like initially, there's sort of like the tools you use, right? But it's like how you use those tools and who's using the tools. There's a lot of strategy and there's a lot of ways you can enhance and optimize that. So
Right.
we've even gone through multiple iterations of different FlutterFlow apps where we built it kind of
Hmm.
badly in the beginning. It was slow. It was not working great. Then we would leverage something a little bit better, rework the architecture a little bit, and we've seen massive speed improvements, especially for our community and that live nature of being able to push content into people's screens without refreshing or doing anything like that. Having that sort of that it feels very live,
Yeah.
and people kind of just expect that because that's how Facebook works. So
Any
it
one
can
of
be
those
that.
any of those 1, 2, 3s that you would like suggest, or like if a new Flutterflow low code guy's getting going, and it's like, what are best strategies for? I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but it's
Yeah,
like I'm interested in the speed differences because I think we're starting to see that as well too. Like
yeah.
as the app bloats, it's like, okay, where can we trim some of this?
Definitely. I think, for most people, it doesn't matter when you start because it's like there's going to be 10 people having a chat conversation. So you don't really need all this, infrastructure or even this kind of extra length of. So it's a great place to start. And I think what's
Yep.
nice is it kind of lets you evolve. The app can get smarter as you grow.
Yep.
But last year we hosted a challenge which had close to like 70,000, email opt-ins, and then they had around 34,000 like app downloads, and we did all of that through a Flutterflow app
Wow.
with Tribe supporting the backend. So in a very short amount of time, we figured out where those bottlenecks were, mostly around chat, and it was silly things. It was like we were making too many calls. Like we would like want to display, it's getting really in the weeds. But if you wanted
Oh
to
yeah, it's
show a
good.
chat message, we want to show what that person said, but we also want to show that person's name and their
Yep.
photo. So we'd have to go make a call to go say, hey,
All those things.
can you give me their photo URL and also their name? And we would do that for, potentially 5,000 chats, right? So just little things like that, which, some of those are really obvious. And so we've restructured the database a little bit. So when someone posts, we just write their name and their photo and their role like back into the chat message database. And now it's stored with us. When we retrieve it, it's right at our
And
fingertips.
is
So
that is I'm just gonna go ahead and poke the elephant because it's here. Like, is that why Firebase was a better contender for you in that regards? Because it was document versus SQL?
either way, I think data structure and architecture it's specific to each platform. I think it
Yeah.
took us a while. We're coming from SQL world into Firebase. There's a lot that it works great with FlutterFlow. I know I'm still experimenting with Supabase. I know you've done a lot more with that,
Yeah.
but so we may potentially move there, but it's one of those things like you can continue to optimize like the data architecture, and sometimes you build it one way, but that foundation's not quite there with how you use it later down the road. So it's more about being able to have a great process where you can iterate on these things regardless
Yep.
of the technologies, wherever you're hosting the database, how you're building it. It's more like it's a way of building apps. It's a way of like optimizing and building and doing these short like optimizations, small optimizations, and not trying to take these huge steps. But it again puts you in control to where like you're the one who, if there's a problem or this part of the app is slow, there's something you can do about it. It's not you having to write an email to a customer support
Right.
person being
Well,
like,
it
hey, this is slow. Can you fix it?
it feels like every, like, 7 to 10 years, like, just as a digital guy, like, we go through these massive shifts of some kind. Like, I remember going from like Evernote into Notion, like, full
Yeah.
on. And I mean, I felt like I was making a decision that was going to radically changed the rest of my life, you know. And in a like professional standpoint for us, like when I chose Tribe and FlutterFlow as like as a part of our tech stack, I knew it was going to have to support not just where we were, like in this pivot, oh my gosh, the world's falling apart, fix it now, but that this was going to have to support us even in the future. So, like, you know, when we're able to go through, like, we're like when our camps and stuff get going again, we'll have like mobile app registration processes,
Yep.
which are totally different than what we did before. And so I'm thinking like, can I build this out in FlutterFlow? Like, what's this going to look like? How are we going to, can this support? And so I think like in choosing your tech stack, that is crucial because like, I wouldn't even claim myself to be a developer. Like I understand it. I can speak the language. I can understand what someone's saying, but like, you throw me in front of a blank notepad and I'm like, okay, you know, like I'm not doing, but I can understand enough to like get around it. And so like when we chose Flutterflow to kind of be that low code thing, number one, it's just designed beautifully. Like shout out to Andrew Daniels and the team. Like they're creating stuff so rapidly and so quick. Like you can actually take this, put it into production, like you said, by the weekend, and watch things roll out. So I am interested, like as we get farther down the road, like what happens when I do have like 2,000 churches hitting this thing all at the same time? Like, what's that leverage of limitation going to be? But I agree with you. I think like just figuring it out step by step, leveraging it, looking at it, and knowing like the different elements of like what your church or what your faith organization might actually need. If you know, like, hey, I just need an app, like our app for our church in this position right now, we're golden, man. Like we
Yeah.
can use this thing for a long time. It works great. It fixes everything we're trying to figure out and everything we're trying to do. And I'm confident like now, like we're getting ready to go like into uh, uh church app 3.0, if you will,
Okay. Nice.
to where we're actually trying to like say, hey, like the check-in system that we use for our kids, they have an API. So can we just leverage that into our app? Like, what would it be like to be able to check in your kids the
Yeah.
same way you do a Chick-fil-A order? Like, how
Yeah.
easy would that be? Like, leverage the habits that people already have, you know? Because yeah, I'm constantly going like, here's our church app, here's Target, here's our church app, here's
Yeah.
Airbnb. Like, does it feel the same? Does it get? Because I think that's a part of our testimony too, of just
Yeah.
like how we represent our faith and what we believe. So, so if correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of were going away on the mobile side. You were kind of going away from the low code space for a while, and then you've kind of come recently back in. Am I correct?
We did, yeah. We actually ventured into building like a React Native replacement, and we're a small team, so that split our resources. And so for 3 or 4 months, we were running two kind of efforts, building new features on the one, then the second one we're trying to like, and it just was never catching up. Of course, hindsight 2020, it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, it's obvious. And time we're like, let's build this thing. Oh, we also have to support and build new features as well. So we just never like we were adding new features to the app faster than the other app could keep up. We have it. We may explore it at a later time when we have more
For sure.
bandwidth.
Yeah.
But we also found faster ways to clone the app. So take something from FlutterFlow and if I had maybe 10 client apps like that, I could replicate them in maybe an hour or two. I could have all 10 of them like running the latest version a lot
Right.
better. That was one of the major roadblocks, which we've found a way around. So yeah, so we're in for now. I think I see it's kind of back up from a product standpoint. Like the thing, building the tool isn't like isn't the thing that's gonna like make this insanely awesome. Like building kind of the why and the how, and like having teams like you guys have adopted it in a certain
Right.
way, like that, getting that right is where sort of the magic happens. Because there's a lot of tools out there, and so the last thing a client really cares about is like what tech platform this is running. As long as it's working,
Sure.
awesome. And like we've tested it enough at scale that like you said, a few thousand churches or whatever, like I don't see that being a problem. in the space, and there are FlutterFlow and no code tools that have millions of users that are
Yeah.
running just fine with no bottlenecks.
They're only going to get better.
Yeah, and it's going to get better. So I think that was a limitation for a while. I haven't. That's not been a limitation for us. In fact, we've leaned into it, for Firebase and other things because we knew we kind of trusted that it would work at scale, and it's been great. It's again it's more of like the way that you can definitely use it wrong, and we did initially,
Well,
and so like I said, we built these we built it badly with the wrong queries and stuff. And like technically it works on the page, but then when you have 10,000
right.
chatting, it doesn't work so much. But well, this is awesome. It's been great to like chat, with you, get caught up. I know we're kind of running up on time. I'd love to
Yeah,
hear
we're
just
good.
like a few, like a minute or two on just like, where do you see, 3 to 5 years from now, especially for churches, like where do you see like this tech going, and what do you see like how communities are being run?
Man, that's a great question. I think 3 to 5 years from now, I see more churches doing more custom things that support their community specifically. And I think like it's every most of the time we've had as churches, we try to go and find a tool and then make it fit our little thing, now we're in a place to where we can say like, no, how do you want this to work? Like how, like just blank slate, imagine, shape it up, right? Got to give a shape up shout out somewhere. Like shape it up and really like, what could this be for your
Yeah.
community? Like how could your world change? And the world is nothing more than a bunch of communities all together, right? And so figuring out how we can put these communities together, but it work in a specific way like that works for you and understand that, I think that's going to be a big deal, and that churches will be able to do it. It's going to be able to be way more cost effective. And I love one of the streams I was watching with Andrew Daniels and Will, the guys at FlutterFlow, and they were talking just about like the pricing differences for an app, a traditional app developer versus a Flutter. And like he was just going off on a preach tangent. And I'm glad he did, because it was just like, hey, like just whatever you're doing, make sure you're providing value to the
Yeah.
person at the end of the day. Like if you're not providing value, then what are you really providing in this world? And I think for a church that says, hey, we want to do something, we want to do it specific, we want to do it real, how could this go? And now like I'm in talks with one of the people we ministries we help, is this lady. She's been like doing street witnessing for 30 plus years, and like she goes into like the complete like just gang infested areas, and she's shutting down strip clubs. I mean, she's just like going for people who typically would not want. And so like she created this course called Sharing Jesus, and so we helped her put it out. She's on Tribe, we put it on Tribe for us, like people are going there. But then we started talking like, hey, what, you go to these churches, you take a group out, on the streets, like what would it like, just dream up the perfect thing. And she's like, oh my gosh, if we could get information to people, because they kind of split up in groups, and if we could have like location awareness of like where people are in these neighborhoods as they're witnessing and stuff, like it's like everything she's listing, it's like that can be done in FlutterFlow. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow we can do this, that's empowering, man. It
Yeah.
just, it is gas to the flame of vision that a visionary has. So I would suggest, if you're new to this, I think community is crucial, and I think community is going to become more a part about accountability, but not in a forced way, not in a forced way, but in a very natural and organic way. And I think that's what's really going to grow the church. I do think people want technology to be a part of their life. They don't want it to be consumed by their life. I mean, we all understand that with Zoom fatigue. It's supposed to be. It's not going to be the replacement of sitting down and going face to face. That's not the goal. But if I can keep a conversation going from Sunday for 7 days straight, I mean that's amazing. I mean, in the football world, we do that, right? We watch a game on Sunday, and then all week long they're talking about the first half of the week. They talk about what happened last week, and the next half of the week they're talking about what's coming up. So that should be the concept. I think conversation is a week long, month long, year long thing, and that's how relationships are built. So
Very
I'm
cool.
I'm a big fan, man. Big fan of
That's
Tribe.
great. Yeah. I appreciate it. If anyone wants to connect with you, I know you also just wrote a book I was going to mention. Where's the
Did.
best place to find you?
You're kind, man. AndrewBirchfield.com is the best place to go. And wrote a book called The Gift of Leadership: How to Find and Become a Great Leader Worth Following. And it was just my heart after seeing and leading so many teams for so long. Like, we never teach people how to be leaders, like there's simple steps and simple processes that can do it. So yeah, AndrewBirchfield.com. You can go see me, my beautiful wife, Amanda, our kiddos, and all that we're up to. And it's the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Andrew, for being on here.
You bet,
Guys,
man.
if this is helpful to you, talking Tribe, talking FlutterFlow, if you're a church especially, love to chat with you.
For
You find
sure.
us at tribesocial.io, and would love to just set up a call and chat with you guys. So thanks, Andrew, and we'll